Is Ukraine willing to give up its territory or even its capital of Kyiv to gain NATO membership? There have been some very stark remarks which have come in lately from NATO and Russia, and it seems that these two sides are seeming to agree on something here for the first time, it seems. In a recent remark made by Sten Jensen, who is the director of NATO's Secretary General's office, he proposed that Ukraine could consider relinquishing some of its disputed territories as a means to secure NATO membership. Now, in response to this, Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, said that to enter the bloc, he's talking about NATO, to enter NATO, Kiev authorities would have to give up even on Kiev itself, the capital of ancient Russia. Now, how far is Ukraine willing to go to gain NATO membership? This is what we want to discuss. And to discuss this further, we are being joined by Dr. Sergei Markov, who is a Russian political scientist and has formerly worked very closely with the Russian presidential office. Welcome on board, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Markov, let me start off right away with Sten Jensen's remarks. Now, he categorically said Ukraine must decide for itself when and under what conditions it wants to negotiate. Now, what do you make of these statements? Is it a direct nudge to Ukraine on what it needs to do to end this war? Because, you know, NATO has made it clear to Zelenskyy earlier as well that there will be no NATO membership until the war is on.
First of all, we should understand that from a Russian point of view, Ukrainian government does not exist as independent government, and Ukraine is neo-colony of the United States of America, of course, in style of 21st century. And everything decided not by Ukrainian government, but U.S. government. It's first. Secondly, from this point of view, in the past, it was threat to the Russian security if Ukraine would be member of NATO, because it means that Ukraine will be used by NATO for the possible aggression against Russia. But now it's already over, because from Russian point of view, Ukraine already occupied by NATO, and Ukrainian army used as proxy army by NATO in the hybrid war against Russia. So it's already done. It's not so much Ukraine part of NATO, but NATO part of Ukraine. And it's NATO already inside Ukraine. It means that the problem of the Ukraine membership of NATO moved to the absolutely another problem. It's a problem of the possibility of nuclear war between Russia and United States of America. Because if Ukraine is in the condition of war with Russia, and Ukraine officially will be made by United States as full member of the NATO, it means that United States will take responsibility in coming to the war with Russia, according to the Article 5 of the NATO treaty. So it's a main point. United States, Washington also understands this. Of course, they don't want to start to the nuclear war with Russia. That's why Washington now thinking about another possible forms of membership.
Mr. Markov, I just want to butt in here. I just want to ask you one more thing. Now, it is not official that Ukraine is part of the NATO bloc, but for all things which are essential for a NATO membership, nearly the entire West is already standing behind Ukraine. So in a sense, Article 5 is pretty much in play, just not officially. Do you see Ukraine's official entry into the NATO bloc will change anything dramatically as far as the current condition is concerned between Ukraine and Russia? Because it is essentially Ukraine and the West standing against Russia at the moment.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the situation of membership of Ukraine to NATO moved already to another sphere. A sphere of the possible how to make Ukraine a member of NATO. I mean, from Washington point of view, and same time not to come to the nuclear war with Russia. So Washington have now few solutions which they discussed. A few possible models. One model, if Article 5 will give guarantees to the Ukraine only to those territories which is not taken by Russian army under the control. It's one possible form, but also it's very dangerous because slightly moving of Russian army to the couple of kilometers, and now it means that also will be Article 5 and nuclear war. Possibly Washington also doesn't like it. Another form that it could be not full membership of Ukraine to the NATO, but endless process of joining to the NATO, some kind of semi-membership. It's second form. And third form, right. It's not, it's without full membership.
Mr. Markov, I just want to get back to the comment which was made by Dmitry Medvedev. He stated that Ukraine would have to move the capital to Lviv. They would have to relinquish Kyiv. They would have to move to Lviv. And if, of course, the Poles agree to this. Now, this is, of course, a quote-unquote. I wanted to take your, taking further from what you just mentioned about all the possibilities regarding NATO membership for Ukraine. If at all, what kind of implication does a comment like this have coming from Mr. Medvedev? What is he implying when he speaks about Lviv? And if the Poles agree, he's of course talking about Poland here. How do you think this impacts Poland as far as Ukraine's membership with NATO is concerned?
I think that Dmitry Medvedev now, when he mentioned sports, it's more radical and more rhetoric, but not specific decision. It's not regarded even inside Russia that Dmitry Medvedev statement will lead to the specific actions of the Russian government. I would say Dmitry Medvedev statement, they're much more radical than actions of the Russian government, and they play a role of some kind of psychology therapy for the Russian population, which is frustrated from the fact that Russian army continues its war already more than a year and have no positive results. So it's all this remark of Dmitry Medvedev will not mean that specific action of Russian government will be done.
He doesn't speak for the government. He doesn't speak for the government when he passes this comment. But I wanted to also take your take on, what does the Russian government want here from Ukraine? Is it just those 4 regions in eastern Ukraine? Is it Kyiv? Is it the entire Ukrainian region? As you mentioned earlier, you don't recognize Ukraine as a standalone government in itself. You're seeing it as a colony of the West anyway. What does Russia want when it comes to this conflict in Ukraine?
First of all, this is war not about territories. Russia, as you may know, is the biggest country by territory in the world. So Russia doesn't need new territories. But main goal of Russia in this operation on Ukraine, not to allow to the Americans to make anti-Russia from Ukraine. Also, we believe that 75% of Ukrainian population, they speak Russian language. It means they are ethnically Russians. And United States is making violent changing of identity with this Russian-Ukrainian population. It's something like if United States or China will change identity of citizens of India and will make them to the Muslim religious, for example.
That's not going to happen ever. Right.
Yeah, but it's exactly what United States doing with population in Ukraine.
Right.
They use violence and propaganda for changing their identity. And of course, if Ukraine, in fact, Russians in Ukraine will be anti-Russians, it's endless threat to the Russian security for the decades. This process which Russia demands to stop.
Mr. Markov, now I also now want to shift focus to, of course, the man who's in the picture most of the time as far as Ukraine is concerned. Is Zelensky's adamance to not cede territory and instead gain back ceded territory, is that what is dragging the war forward? As there is no compromise from Zelensky's side when it comes to any kind of negotiation with Russia.
I'm sure that Zelensky, in his soul, wants the peace. He come to the political scene with main program of immediately stop war on Donbass against people of Donbass, immediately stop de-Russification process, immediately stop repression against Orthodox Church on Ukraine. So he's Russian-speaking people himself. His native language is Russian language. He had been grown up, in fact, on the south part of the territory where 95% of the populations they are Russian. So he wants Ukraine to move to the peace, but he's puppet in the hand of United States hawks, and United States dictatorship demand him to continue this war. It's not something like making pressure on Zelensky to move to the peace. No, it's a strong order from United States, secret order to the Zelensky to be hawk and to be a fan of the war endlessly. And he fulfills this order from Washington. If Washington will moderate a little bit his pressure, immediately Zelensky will be happy to jump from the platform of war to the platform of peace and to the negotiation and to find some compromise.
Now, I've heard your sentiment regarding the West. Of course, you have your thoughts, you have your beliefs here. Of course, it doesn't, honestly, personally, I do not agree with the fact that US does not want this war to end because the West seems tired of giving money and arms to Ukraine as even the counteroffensive has not gone as planned. Is the West trying to pull out by forcing Ukraine to compromise and relinquish land? Why would they even suggest this, that you cede land and you take NATO territory?
First of all, I mentioned that we should take a different West. Germany and France can give some recommendation to the Zelensky to come to the compromise, but Germany and France means nothing, zero, because Zelensky have a real chief, a real dictator, a real commander who is Washington, and Washington making all decisions. Not recommendation to Zelensky, but clear decision on what should be done. And for Washington, the main goal is to make anti-Russia from Ukraine. And Washington use this war for this purpose. More Ukrainians killed in the war with Russia, more Ukrainian families will hate Russia forever. It's main idea of Washington, which they continue. They believe that couple of years of war with Russia will make Ukraine anti-Russian country forever.
So finally, I just want to ask you, what will it take for Russia to back off, or what will it take for peace to prevail in the region and for this conflict to end?
Russia will be ready to stop fighting if Washington will step down and will come to compromise, meaning not making Ukraine anti-Russia. Because if Ukraine will continue to be anti-Russia, Russia will have to continue this war endlessly. And of course, second option, if Russian army will be not successful, it's also one of the possibility for Russia to step down and to sign the peace deal with bad conditions for Russia.
So it seems like a question of who's going to back off first. Will it be Washington? Will it be Moscow? But of course, time will tell how things proceed from here. In the meantime, of course, seems to be no truce or peace in the foreseeable future. But thank you for giving your time, sir. Thank you for your inputs. That was Mr. Sergei Markov, who is a Russian political scientist, joining us for his insights on this.